Welcome. We wanted to talk about Judaism as a big title. Of course, it's endless. We started speaking about the book, of the people of the book, and then continued to a story of a family. But the story of a Jewish nation begins here, in the book of Exodus. Before we go into each chapter, just to give a perspective of what we're going to do in the next few chapters. So first of all, we'll talk about the creation of a nation. In our narrative, how was the nation created? How do we celebrate it? We will go from the slavery in Egypt, where we ended the book of Genesis, with the people, the family coming to Egypt, and now the book of Exodus will begin with the new Pharaoh, and then the different events and how we remember them in Jewish culture until this day. Exodus and Passover. The Mount Sinai and Shavuot, sitting in the desert, and Sukkot. So we will talk about, again, the timeline, the chronology of the events, and how we remember it, and how we do things to remember it today in the Jewish culture of the 21st century, which will also lead us through the books of the Torah. We started with Genesis, and we will end up with Deuteronomy. Ready, set, go. Let's begin. The total number of persons that were of Jacob's issue came to 70, Joseph being already in Egypt. Joseph died, and all his brothers, and all that generation, and a new king arose over Egypt, who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, "Look, the Israelite people are much too numerous for us." So they set taskmasters over them to oppress them with forced labor, and they built garrison cities for Pharaoh, Pithom and Ramses. That's interesting, because Ramses II talks about building two buildings. He writes it in Egyptian scriptures of building Per Pithom and Per Ramses, the same names that we have here in Exodus chapter 1. And what did Pharaoh say? Hine am bnei Israel. Look, the Israelite people. He's already addressing this family not as a family, but as a peoplehood, as a nation. And the nation is born into this horrible circumstances of slavery. And it's an interesting question, no matter which perspective you take. You can take a secular perspective, saying this is all one big myth, and ask, why did the author of the myth insist not to introduce the nation in its homeland, but outside its homeland and in slavery? And the answer is very clear. Whether if you ask it from a secular perspective or from a religious perspective, why did God choose to put the nation in that place, in those circumstances, as they become a nation? And the answer that's given in the text again and again, you will remember you were once a slave, you were once a foreigner, and know how you will treat the weak, the foreigners that are sitting with you when you have a power. Anyways, that is the introduction of a situation of a nation. And then we have introduction of the hero of the 5 books of Moses. A certain man of the house of Levi went and married a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son. And when she saw how beautiful he was, she hid him for 3 months. When she could not hide him no longer, because to remind you, the Egyptians would kill every male newborn, she got a wicker basket for him. And she sends this basket with a child among the reeds by the bank of the Nile. Oh boy. But then, as we know, the story continues. When the daughter of Pharaoh took pity on it and said, "This must be a Hebrew child." And Moses grows up. And how do we meet Moses? Until now, Moses is passive. What is the first thing that we see Moses doing? Which is an interesting question, since this is the role model leader that Jewish culture presents. A man who's considered one of the most righteous people who ever lived. The first thing that he does is he stands up to oppression. Sometime after that, when Moses had grown up, he went out to his kinsfolk and witnessed their labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his kinsmen. He turned this way and that, and seeing no one about, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Apparently, he killed him. Didn't say a word. The man that will give the whole Torah didn't say a word. But he took action. He stood up to oppression. And then he had to flee Egypt for it. And he comes to Midian. When Pharaoh learned of the matter, he sought to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh. And in Midian, Moses will meet, of course, at the well, because that's where everything happens. That's where Jacob met Rachel. That's where Saul, when he goes looking for his mules, will find guidance. The well is the meeting place. And in the well, Moses meets his wife Tzipporah. She's not yet his wife, but she will be. And she brings him to his father-in-law, Jethro, and he will be responsible of the flock of Jethro. And as he takes the sheep out, came to Horeb, the mountain of God, probably the same place as Mount Sinai, with different names. I won't bother to explain that right now, but it's considered to be the same place. An angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire out of a bush. He gazed, and there was a bush all in flames, yet the bush was not consumed. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to look, God called to him out of the bush, "Moses, Moses." He answered, "Here I am." Hineni, just like Abraham in the binding of Isaac, if you remember. And he said, "Do not come closer. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you stand is holy ground." That idea of removing shoes or sandals when you come to a holy place is still existing also in Jewish culture. For example, in the priestly blessing and in a few specific communities also when coming into a synagogue, and of course in Islam, taking off the shoes before coming to the mosque. Coming back to Moses, remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. "I am," he said, "the God of your father, the God of Abraham and God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. It's an amazing chapter where God actually introduces himself. We're not reading all the chapter together right now, but Moses gets here the mission that will echo throughout history. He will need to bring the words to Pharaoh. In Hebrew, "Shalach et ami." In English, "Let my people go." This mission, "let my people go," when we think about it, we don't think only of the people of Israel 3,200 years ago. Because "let my people go" became a slogan Exodus became a slogan of people who believe in freedom of every human being, of every group of people. So, for example, the reason why we will hear Louis Armstrong or Ray Charles sing these words is because this was a gospel for African people who were brought as slaves to America to pick cotton, to be servants of Christian people who also taught them a little bit Christianity. And they believed and they knew that "let my people go" is true to every human being. This will also be the slogan of Jews in Russia, in communist regime that will wish to come to Israel and will not be allowed to, in demonstrations all over the world, "let my people go." Exodus will also be the name of a ship that tried to bring Holocaust survivors to Israel and not given the freedom by the British. "Let my people go," Exodus, these are terms that have to do with human values from then until today. And there's no better way to close this introduction, this exposition of the book of Exodus and Moses than allowing Louis Armstrong to remind us of his story. So we can enjoy this little clip and song and then come together to the next chapter.
Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Let my people go.
In Egypt land,
let my people go.
Oppressed so hard they could not stand.
Let my people go.
So the Lord said, go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaohs to let my people go.
Let my people go.
So Moses went to Egypt land.
Let my people go.
He made old Pharaoh understand.
Let my people go.
Yes, the Lord said, go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaohs to let my people go.
Let my people go.
Thus spoke the Lord, bold Moses said,
let my people go.
If not, I'll smite your firstborn dead.
Let my people go.
'Cause the Lord said, go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh
To let my people go.
You may argue, Ariel, what you said is just wrong. You talked about the creation of a nation. A nation has self-definition. A nation has a common identity that they make, that they create. They have memory. But all you talked about now is a nation of slaves, and their whole identity was determined by someone else, by Pharaoh. And maybe you're right. Maybe the place to begin the creation of nation is now. Is after the 9th plague. Is the beginning of Jewish time. Beginning of Jewish time? What do you mean? In every culture, we count time to what is significant to us. In our individual society, we celebrate birthdays, celebrating the individual. In the Christian calendar, we count to the birth of the Christian Messiah, of Jesus. In the Jewish calendar of today, we count to the creation of the world by God. How does the Bible count? When does it start, the counting? When does the Jewish nation, as a nation, start to count time? Starts to define for itself faith, identity, group of belonging. The answer is in Exodus chapter 12, after the 9th plague. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This month shall mark for you the beginning of months. It shall be the first of the months of a year. Speak to the whole community of Israel and say, on the 10th of this month, each of them shall take a lamb to a family, a lamb to a household, in which they are to eat it." A lamb, by the way, is also a holy animal to the Egyptians. And the idea, what do you do? Why do you take a lamb? It is going to be a sacrifice. A sacrifice to who? To the Hebrew God, to the God of the Jews, not to the Egyptian master. An identity and a faith. You shall keep watch over it until the 14th day of this month. Which month is this? It's the month that is called in the newer Hebrew calendar. This is not a biblical name. The month of Nisan, the month of the spring. It's around April. And all the assembled congregation of the Israelites shall slaughter it at twilight, at the same time exactly. And they shall take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts. How do you say doorpost in Hebrew? Mezuzah. Every door has 2 sides, 2 doorposts, which we call in Hebrew mezuzot. So you will put blood on the doorpost and on the mashkof, is the Hebrew word, on the lintel of the houses in which they are to eat it. So whoever is going to fulfill these commandments is supposed to worship the God of Israel. And not only worship, you can't hide it. You can't conceal it. You need to show it. To show that you believe that the God of Israel will protect you and that you follow him. And then, when you will make this sacrifice, this is how you shall eat it. Your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it hurriedly. It is a Passover offering to the Lord. You should eat it as you show that you believe that the Exodus will happen after so many generations of slavery. For that night I will go through the land of Egypt and strike down every firstborn. That is the 10th plague. And the blood on the houses where you are staying shall be a sign for you. When I see the blood, I will pass over you, so that no plague will destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. So the name Passover, here it comes from here, will mean the plague, the 10th plague, will pass over these houses that will show their faith in the God of Israel. That's the meaning of the word in every language. Pesach in Hebrew, Pesach means to skip, lifsoach. You can see the same verb also with Elijah. In Arabic, fischa, the same meaning, and in English, pass over. It will also be the name of a sacrifice and the name of a holiday. The sacrifice of Passover and the holiday of Passover. What is the date? I don't mean right now. When is this happening according to the text here? This is all the first day of the first month of the first year of the Jewish counting that will be, or the biblical counting. But then it will not only tell what happens now, but if you believe, and it's very hard after generations of slavery to believe in something different that is going to happen. But part of the way that God, through Moses, will convince the people is not only tell them what will happen to them, but how your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren will remember your choice if you take the right choice. What kind of life will they have? Don't think about yourself. We always neglect ourselves, but think about the future generations. Think about your children. What kind of life do you want them to have? What kind of memory do you want them to have? This day shall be to you one of remembrance. You shall celebrate it as a festival to the Lord. Throughout the ages you shall celebrate it as an institution for all time. Ledorotechem, to your generations, it says in the text. All the detail of how it will be remembered, how it will be celebrated, is given already now, before they took a lamb, before they did anything. How will this be celebrated at the year 2019 when this lecture is recorded? 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. Whoever eats leavened bread from the first day to the 7th day, that person shall be cut off from Israel. You shall celebrate a sacred occasion on the first day, and a sacred occasion on the 7th day. No work. Oh, again, that translation. What is the Hebrew term? You tell me. What is the Hebrew term? No melacha. Right? No melacha at all shall be done to them. Wait a minute. So let's just get a frame of what they just said. You're not allowed to do any melacha. When? On the 7 days of a holiday? No. It says on the first day and the 7th day. So it means we have a distinction between the beginning and end, which are extra festive, where you're not allowed to do any melacha, almost. We'll see how the verse continues. And the middle days. So the middle days we will call Chol HaMoed. Chol means like a regular weekly day. Moed means holiday. So it's a mixture. It's a holiday, but we don't have the same commandments as we do on Shabbat, as we do on the 1st and 7th day, where we have special obligations. Let's just read back. No melacha at all shall be done on them on the 1st and 7th day. Only what every person is to eat, that alone may be prepared for you. So it means it's not exactly like Shabbat, but on this day, which we also call in Jewish tradition Yom Tov. Yom Tov means a holiday where you're not allowed to do any melacha unless it has to do with the food of that day. The food that you're eating that day, you're allowed, for example, to have a barbecue. So the rule of thumb is you cannot light a fire, but you can transfer an existing fire and cook and do whatever you want to do for the food, for the meals of that day. So that is true to the first and last day of Passover. It is true to Shavuot. It is true to Rosh Hashanah. It is true on the first day of Sukkot. So basically the holidays, that is the rule. It is similar to Shabbat with one exception. So you cannot drive, for example, You cannot light a fire for light. You cannot pick a flower. You can pick an apple. You can manipulate the world just for the meals of that day. So that's a little difference between the holiday and Shabbat. And as we said, in the middle of the holiday, the 2nd to the 6th day, you can drive, you can go to the beach, you can celebrate, but remember, it is a holiday. You don't treat it like any other day. There are special sacrifices to be brought. It is a festival. It will be, as we will mention, a festival of pilgrim to the tabernacle and temple. So we said, it's 7 days. There's a distinction between the 1st and 7th day and the days in the middle. And there's this commandment here about unleavened bread. Leavened bread, what we call in Hebrew, chametz. So we're talking about 5 types of grain that all contain gluten. And when their flour is mixed with water, there's a process of fermentation. And that process, once it's happened, is what we would call leavened bread or chametz. So the 5 grains that you see here on the slide, barley, rye, spelt, oats, and of course wheat. No problem with these grains if you want to eat them as is, or if you really quickly bake your bread, as they did when they came out of Egypt, in haste. Like a very quick pita, right? That you come, mix the flour with the water, and the rule is you have 18 minutes from the second that the flour touches the water until it's fully baked and ready to be eaten. If that's the case, it means it definitely did not ferment, it's not leavened, and it's kosher matzah. For example, matzah is unleavened bread. For example, Yemenite Jews do it exactly like that, and it does not look like the hard matzah that we usually find in the supermarket. It looks like a pita. As long as it follows these rules, it's perfectly fine. So we started talking about the commandments of Passover. We said, you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread. So it has another name. It's called Passover, and it's called the Feast of Unleavened Bread, Chag HaMatzot. For on this day I brought your ranks out of the land of Egypt. You shall observe this day throughout the ages as an institution for all time. In the first month. Okay, so we notice the Bible counts the months from the spring, from around April, from the month of Nisan, which is called in the Bible the first month. From the 14th day of the month, that's a full moon holiday, at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at the evening. So we learned the days of this holiday are called Passover. We learned why. Are called Pesach, which is Hebrew for Passover. Holiday of Matzot. It's also called Chag HaCherut, as we celebrate freedom not only 3,240 years ago or so, but freedom as a value. And it also has an agricultural meaning. The holiday of, I translated here spring. What can I do? Not everything translates well. Chag HaAviv. The holiday of spring is a translation from modern Hebrew. But the word Aviv in biblical Hebrew means the time when the grain is ripe and ready for harvest. That is the literal meaning of the word Aviv in biblical Hebrew. And what happens in Passover is the barley is ripe. The wheat only starts to be like it's outside, it's green, it's not yet ready for harvest. The barley is ready for harvest, and we will bring a sacrifice of barley at Passover. We'll come back to that sacrifice soon. It is called Omer. But first, we need to really think about the celebrations of Passover, both in biblical times and in the period of the Second Temple period, and today, without a temple. What's the difference and why? Imagine yourself 2,000 years ago in the places that today are the archaeological park or the Western Wall tunnels, but then were a lively street full of people. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of Jewish people on pilgrim coming from Lebanon, from Egypt, from Rome. Let's say it's Passover 2,000 years ago. Think of this little boy that comes with his entire family, packing everything on the chariot and making the way to Jerusalem. On the way they see all these pilgrims joining. Daddy, Mommy, who are these people? Oh, these are our brothers, our sisters. They came out of Egypt together with us. And when they arrive, they had this huge celebration. We know exactly which instruments they played, how they sat, what they ate. It was kind of a wrap, a sandwich of a Passover sacrifice, this huge barbecue, with some maror, something to add some flavor to the meat, and a wrap of a matzah, which was like a pita. But before eating, of course, they would invite anyone who does not have his own meal to come and join. So this was the huge festival of the whole people coming together to celebrate Passover. Passover is one of the three festival pilgrims: Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot, which we will learn about also very soon. So that was the way it was until the destruction of the temple we just talked about in the 9th of Av, also the destruction of a second temple. And then the question came up, how do we continue to celebrate a pilgrim festival when there's no place to pilgrim to? Jerusalem is destroyed, the temple is destroyed. How do we continue the memory when we cannot fulfill all the commandments of memory that are given in the Torah that we read together from the book of Exodus? The sages, the rabbis in the Mishnah and Talmud write a whole tractate about Passover, Pesachim, from the word Pesach, of course. And here we're reading from the Talmud. In every generation, a person is obligated to regard himself as if he had come out of Egypt. As it said, "You shall tell your child on that day, it is because of this that the Lord did for me when I left Egypt." But how do we do it? How do we remember? If hundreds of thousands of people come together and celebrate, that's a live memory. But when Israel is scattered all over the world, the sages will create the ceremony which replaces the huge festival of Jerusalem and brings it into the home of every family. It's not just a ceremony. It's a festival that will engage all the senses, the smell, the taste, the way you sit, what you do. The Seder night is designed to have a memory of freedom, the memory of Exodus, passed from generation to generation throughout the ages. So when we bring in the holiday, the first night is called the Seder night, Leil HaSeder, in which we have the Haggadah. The Haggadah is not only a text, it's a whole set of instructions of what to do, how to eat, what to eat, in order to remind of a story. So we have the Seder plate, where every food is made to attract attention to a part of a story. For example, we'll eat maror to remember how bitter the life was under Egypt. We will eat charoset, which is really tasty but looks like cement, like the cement that our ancestors used to make. Of course, these are all only symbols in order to tell the story even to children, even to the most simple, even ignorant person sitting, that this story will come to life. For example, you have to kind of recline on your mattress or on your couch, or even on your chair, but show you're not sitting up straight. You're a free person, drinking 4 cups of wine. Maimonides tells us, following the Talmud, of course, even the poorest person in Israel who cannot afford anything, the congregation will supply him with 4 glasses of wine, so he will feel free. 4 cups of wine, 4 sons that the Haggadah talks about in order to tell the leader of the Seder how to talk to every different child and pass on the story. Ma Nishtana is a song which asks the question, why is this night so different? Of course, 2,000 years ago, nobody had to teach a 4-year-old to ask questions because everything was so different all around. It was this huge celebration, and he would ask questions and everybody would answer, and he would remember we came out of Egypt. Today, what we have, already after the destruction of a temple until today, we have ways to introduce the questions. So the child asks, Ma Nishtana, why is this night different from all other nights? Why do all other nights we sit up straight and now we are all reclined? Why do all other nights we eat whatever we feel like and now we have these specific foods? And the family answers and explains and gives the story of the Exodus. So what you will find, many different customs of the celebration of Passover, common to most of them, is that the children are engaged, are awake. One of the nice examples for games for children is the middle matzah of a Seder plate. On the Seder plate we have 3 matzahs, and the middle one is called a fikoman. And different customs, what you do with it, some people hide it, and then the kids need to fetch it to find it. Some people kind of guard it next to the head, the leader of the Seder, and the kids need to steal it from him. Whatever the game is, the kids stay engaged until late at night as the story is being told and read from the Haggadah. So everyone feels that they used to be slaves in Egypt, and now we must appreciate the value of our freedom. And also remember that next year, Shana Ba'ah, Yerushalayim Habnuya, and rebuilt Jerusalem. And thus, this message of freedom was passed on from generation to generation for the last thousands of years. You know, when David Ben-Gurion came to the UN committee, he asked them a question. You know, about 300 years ago, there was a ship called Mayflower. Very important in human history. It brought new people to the new land. Does anyone remember how many they were? Does anyone remember what they ate? What day was it exactly? No one? But here, our nation remembers, and every child can tell you exactly how many people, what day it was, what they ate, as we celebrate our freedom and pass this memory as a lesson also to our present and future from generation to generation. To summarize, we spoke about Passover also as part of the Shalosh Regalim, the 3 pilgrim festivals, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, as we talked about the story of Exodus and how we celebrate this story until this day, but that is not the end of the story. The story continues, and so do the celebrations in the Jewish calendar. So moving now to chapter 8 of our course, and the next topic will be counting the Omer. We mentioned it before, but now it's worth really explaining. First of all, the Hebrew word Omer. Omer means a little pile of grain. It can be barley, wheat, oats, whatever grain you want. A little pile will be called Omer. If the pile is a bit larger, it will be called in Hebrew Aluma. And when you start harvesting the barley on Passover, which is now Aviv, which means in biblical Hebrew it is ripe, you need to first bring your first pile of barley, your first omel, to the temple. Thanksgiving. I have a field full of barley. Before I enjoy it, we come to give thanks at the temple in Jerusalem, or beforehand at the tabernacle. So from that day, which is the second day of Passover, when you bring the omel, a count starts, a count of 7 weeks and a day. So says the book of Leviticus. And you shall count from the morrow after the day of rest. If you remember, the first day of Passover, we were not allowed to do any melacha, and we understand we're talking now about the next day, the second day of Passover. 7 weeks shall there be complete. Unto the morrow after the 7th week shall you number 50 days, and you shall present a new meal offering unto God. The new meal offering, or the new harvest, will be the wheat. The wheat is not yet ready for harvest on Passover, but 50 days after Passover, we have the festival of harvest, which we also call Shavuot. Shavuot, as at the end of the counting of Omer, Sfirat HaOmer. During this period, where traditional Jews count every day, today we are 7 days to the Omer, today we are 2 weeks and 1 day, which are 15 days to the Omer, and so on. Every day there's a count, leading us from Passover to Shavuot. These days of counting the Omer are also known as days of mourning, days of sadness in the Jewish calendar. That has nothing to do with this biblical command. That has to do with later events that will happen in the 2nd century under the Romans, under the oppression, and due to those events, there are sad customs during this time. I think we should talk about them when we come there to the 2nd century, to the period of the Emperor Hadrian. For now, we will let that be. At the end of 7 weeks of counting, we have a new holiday, and its name is Shavuot. What does Shavuot mean in Hebrew? Weeks, right? Because we just counted 7 weeks and a day until we came to this holiday. We already mentioned the agricultural meaning of the holiday of Shavuot, which is the harvest of wheat. Again, I know it's confusing. Passover, we harvest barley. Shavuot, we harvest wheat, which is more important and significant in Israeli, Jewish, and human agriculture in general throughout the generations. Another name for Shavuot is Matan Torah. In Jewish tradition, this is the day, 50 days after the Exodus, with the divine revelation of God in Mount Sinai to the people of Israel. The highest level of revelation that the people have ever known and ever will know, because not through a prophet, but the voice of God was heard, according to the description in the book of Exodus, chapter 20, to all of the people of Israel standing there on Mount Sinai. The 10 Commandments, and that was not it, because Moses will come up to the mountain and receive many more laws, 12 chapters of laws, everything that has to do with how people behave towards each other and theological basis of Judaism. 3 weekly portions are there on Mount Sinai, and this, of course, is one of the most important events in the Jewish narrative. Exodus was only the means for the cause. Mount Sinai is already the cause, is already the vision. Exodus supplied Israel with the option, with the freedom necessary to fulfill their destiny, their role in this world. And the role is to be a role model. How to be a role model, how to live according to God's wish in this world, that is all the Torah, that we celebrate being given in Mount Sinai on this holiday of Shavuot. Of course, that is the main meaning that will be carried, especially when the agricultural meanings out of Israel have very little relevance. So this meaning will become the main one. And a lot of the customs and celebrations will talk about this issue of receiving the Torah. The customs of Shavuot. One of the customs is Tikkun Leil Shavuot. Tikkun Leil Shavuot is a custom where you'll have study of Torah all night long. When the holiday comes in, you'll see advertisement all over the cities in Israel which are more traditional, and also you'll see many in those who are less, for classes that go on 1 a.m., 2 a.m., inviting everybody to join interesting studies of Judaism. Torah, although what we said it is a name for the first part of the Tanakh, it is also a general name for all the holy books and all the religious studies in Judaism. So why do we have this custom of learning all night long? Just to show how we appreciate the gift. If you got a gift and you want to use it, you want to embrace it, you don't just put it on your side, you just don't just go to sleep. So to show how appreciative we are of the gift of receiving the Torah, we learn all night long. So that is a custom that you will see often. Another custom which is very new is dairy products. On Shavuot, the idea of having dairy products on the holiday is an interesting one. Again, using food in order to tell a story, we got a lot of dietary laws, what you can eat, what you can't eat in the Torah. So to remember that before we had the Torah, but we were waiting for it, we didn't know exactly what to eat, so maybe we didn't eat any meat for a few days. So a way to tell the story is also to eat dairy products only. There are celebrations with water, even splashing and water fights, showing water. Water is a symbol of life, and so is the Torah. The water is being used as a metaphor for the Torah often, and therefore it's also a holiday of water. So those are a few customs that have to do with celebrating the Torah being received, being given to the people of Israel on this holiday of revelation, Shavuot. Another custom that we'll mention as a community festival in communities in modern Israel has to do with the agricultural meaning. We said it is the holiday of harvest, and another name for the holiday, there are 4 names: Shavuot, Matan Torah, Katsir, and Bikurim, the holiday of first fruits. And just think of the Israelis coming back to the land after 2,000 years and learning how to recultivate it, harvest wheat for the first time, barley, grow fruit trees, cattle, agriculture. And when the land is blooming by the Israelis, it's a huge celebration, which is not necessarily a religious one, but a celebration of huge satisfaction of a community that was able to grow products, to bring first fruit to the land. So these aspects, the agricultural aspects, became a big part of Israeli culture. And if you go to different communities that are not like big cities, but if you would go to a kibbutz or a moshav, you would definitely see a lot of beautiful celebrations, people dressed in white, going out, coming together, all the community, many times presenting also the first babies that were born in that year, whatever products that community has. So it's a really nice event if you have tourists at this time of year, which is around May. It's always really a wonderful experience to come to. If you pass by any kind of Jewish little community like a moshav or kibbutz, it's worth to take a stop. It's worth to check when exactly is the main ceremony and come in with your groups, or if you're on your own, a beautiful experience is promised. So those were a few words about Shavuot, which is a Yom Tov. Remember, no melacha, but you can have a barbecue. You can cook the food for the same day. You can move a fire from place to place, but not light a fire. Holiday, starting in the evening and going until the following night, 50 days after Passover. So we said Passover is a full moon holiday around April, so this will be usually around May or the beginning of June. Coming back to the main story, giving the Torah. Of course, this is one of the attributes of Moses. If you want to make a painting of Moses, many times you would draw him with the 2 tablets. That's what he's known for, right? The 5 books of Moses, giving the Torah. And in art, he's represented in a very strange way. You will find that Moses is presented with horns. So we see here Michelangelo, beautiful sculpture, but why the horns? Even if you go to the Knesset, you see Marc Chagall, and he has kind of horns, but horns that look like beams of light. That is because Marc Chagall is both loyal to the text and to the international language of art. So how did the art develop these horns for Moses? Book of Exodus, I brought here the Hebrew to begin with. ויהי ברדת משה מהר סיני ושני לוחות העדות ביד משה ברידתו מן ההר ומשה לא ידע, and Moses did not know, כי קרן אור פניו בדברו איתו. That beams of light came from his face when God was revealed to him. And the text continues to say that he had to put on a mask because people couldn't look at him because of a big light that came out of his face. So that is very clear in the text. The word karan in Hebrew, karan or panav, the skin of his face beamed, shone. These letters have a double meaning in Hebrew. It can mean like radiate, and it can mean horns. So if you look at a Jewish translation, and many of the Christian translations too, have it right. So Moses came down from Mount Sinai, and as Moses came down from the mountain bearing the 2 tablets of the pact, Moses was not aware that the skin of his face was radiant. So you will see many translations that give this correct meaning. Since he had spoken with him, he meaning God that revealed himself to Moses. So how did we get to these horns? You already understand it's a mistranslation. And that appears in the Vulgate translation, a very famous translation to Latin, one of the most important ones for the Catholic Church. And it was translated by Jerome in Bethlehem, which is also a site to visit, the place where Jerome translated the Bible. And in the Latin, what it says, and he did not know that his face was horned. And through manuscripts, which were illustrated, handwritten and illustrated, and Moses appeared there with horns, so that became one of the 2 attributes of Moses. If you want to say in art, Moses is this person here, there are 2 ways to do it. One is let him hold tablets, and the other, which is very common, is putting these horns on him, which is not as flattering, not as close to the text, and could say for Jews, in a way, can be very offensive also. Of course, also because it's a wrong reading of a text, but also because Moses is, for Jews, the highest prophet that ever lived. And the laws of Moses that Moses brought from Mount Sinai is what guides Jews in their daily life every day. So those were a few words also about the visuals that we see in art from Mount Sinai, and of course the most important event that is celebrated on the second pilgrim festival, which we mentioned, the festival of Shavuot. So we have one left. Right? So the next chapter we'll talk about Israel in the desert and the festival of Sukkot.